Alright, so I got a comment recently on my channel asking if I could do a video on my furnace. And I realized that I've never really done a video on my furnace. So since I got that comment, I thought, yeah, why not? I'm doing a video about this thing. I would do a how to build this thing kind of video, but the only problem is I already built it. So, yeah, let's talk about it. I want to talk about is the wood that I used to burn in it, because you could just use charcoal, which works absolutely fine. I haven't really seen people on YouTube use wood to melt metal, mostly because it takes a lot of work. You gotta be constantly feeding the furnace. If you use something like charcoal, it will last a lot longer. You don't have to feed the furnace as much as you do with wood. But I don't mind the work, so I do it. Hardwood seems to burn a lot longer inside the furnace. However, it doesn't produce as much heat as like a softwood does. Softwood tends to burn faster, but gives you way more heat. So it's kind of a trade-off of which one you want to use. If you use softwood, it will burn very fast. If you use hardwood, it will take a little bit longer to burn, but it will still burn fast, as it is wood. Typically, I just use whatever I have lying around. And so the bottom half of the furnace is nothing but a propane tank with an L pipe inside of it filled with ash. I welded a handle on the side of it so that it could be easily carried around. And on the bottom, to kind of prop it up a little bit higher, I welded two horseshoes. Basically, I cut the horseshoes in half and welded the horseshoes to the stand on the bottom. Basically, that's all that bottom tank is. Now, before I go much further than this, I forgot to mention how I cut into these propane tanks. First of all, I made sure they were completely empty. I took the nozzle off the propane tank, then I filled the propane tank up with water and made my cuts. Kind of a safety measure to make sure the tank doesn't explode when you take a grinder to cut the tank open. Now going up to the top, this top half's a little bit more tricky. Basically all I did was take and cut the top off a propane tank, saving the top piece because we'll be using that later. And then I cut the bottom off, or basically just cut a hole in the bottom so it can set up on top of the other propane tank. So then I just took a bucket, put it inside the propane tank. Basically it's just round, just to hold the shape of the furnace. Put that in the center, then I packed in ash, sand, and cement mixture around the outside edge. So the recipe for it is right here. And then once that was dry, I pulled that can out. The top of the lid is pretty simple. It's the top half of what we cut off of the other tank. Then what I did was I basically cut a hole in the top of that. I cut it to this about the same size pipe that I put inside of the bottom tank so that the airflow would be all the same, so that whatever air goes in can come out at the same speed that it went in. I went ahead and did that. Then I flipped the lid around, put a pipe inside the lid, and then packed my ash, sand, and cement mixture around that. So far, the ash and sand mixture that I've been using, it's really well. I've not really had any cracks. It does get a little crumbly, mainly just doesn't fall apart in huge chunks. It just kind of crumbles. I did have to, a while back, I had to redo the lid. I also put these screws in. It helps hold the cement in the bottom of this so it doesn't just fall out. Now on to how I melted the metal. So to get the fire hot enough, I use a fan for this so I can blow air into the fire. That's what this L pipe is down here at the bottom. It's a place where I can send air into, which will pump it up into the top where the fire is. This actually really helps with keeping the fire hot enough to melt the metal. This is also why wood tends to burn very quickly. Like in a normal fireplace, your wood will stay in there for, you know, a good chunk of time. But when you're blowing extra oxygen in there by blowing air, it's like you're constantly blowing on the fire. So it causes the fire to burn through fuel quicker. The type of fan I use is a 12-volt fan. It's actually a turbo fan. It was designed to sit up inside of a car window. It's a 12-volt fan. So I use a small power supply to get it to 12 volts to run the fan. But you probably could just get like a normal house fan and just kind of tunnel into the center. All you really need to do is just push air into there. So now on to the type of crucibles I used. All right, I used to use cut-off camping propane tanks. I used to cut off the tops of them and put a wire onto that like this and make a crucible like this. And this would just fit right down in the top of my furnace. Really nice, really simple. I found out very quickly that these type of crucibles don't last very long. I found that I can only use it for about 3 or 4 times, and then the crucible's done. Since the fire heats it up, the metal slowly gets oxidized, so it eventually busts and you get a hole in your propane tank. But I do like it, and I still will use it if it's available to me. Another thing you can use as a crucible is a cut-off fire extinguisher bottom. So big fire extinguishers like this, or small fire extinguishers, all have really thick metal walls. So they work really well as crucibles. So you get like old ones that are already empty, or they're full of like a powdery substance. And you just cut off the bottoms of them. And then you drill 2 holes the size of a small rebar. And I just put the rebar through there like that. This is literally just set right inside of the furnace. I used to take and put the lid on it and set 2 bricks in between the lid and the container itself, and then I would stick my wood in the side. Actually faster if you take the lid off and you take the bricks out and you don't put the lid back on. You literally just set your crucible inside there and put the wood in around the crucible. This works a lot better. It's also closer to the heat, so it melts the aluminum way faster. I think that's pretty much it. Really simple. I'm starting to really use it recently, and I really like it. Best furnace I've ever had. It's also my only furnace I've ever had. I hope this answers your question on this. That's pretty much how I do it. Thanks for watching. See you next week with another video. Have a great week. Thanks for watching. Bye.